I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the I.D.F. reveals a snapshot of its state-of-the-art terror tunnel detection technology. A new Israeli initiative seeks to pump some new life into the Dead Sea, and will reveal the top tunes that Israelis are moving to on Spotify. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. A small fire broke out outside an Israeli kibbutz near the Gaza border yesterday after Palestinians from Gaza flew a firebomb over the border with a kite. This is actually the third such incident in the last week, and though the bombs typically cause no damage or injuries, their mere presence suggests that Hamas has not backed down an inch from its threat to overrun the security barrier and destroy the Jewish state. Israel has seen thousands of Palestinians flocking to the Gaza border for the last 3 weekends for the Hamas-sponsored March of Return protest. Despite claims that this is merely a peaceful sit-in, however, Israel largely sees these violent and bloody rallies as a smokescreen for Hamas terror. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have thrown Molotov cocktails, stones, and brandished weapons in an attempt to either destroy or overrun the border into Israel. That's why the army has responded with live fire as it deems necessary, an act that has been largely criticized in international forums. At this time, over 30 Palestinians have been killed in these clashes by Israeli bullets, including one Palestinian journalist and many confirmed Hamas militants. Ahead of this week's Memorial Day and Independence Day activities, which begin tomorrow at sundown here in Israel, the army will be shuttering all Palestinian checkpoints in both Gaza and the West Bank. The restriction of movement is a necessary security measure according to the Israeli security. Cases involving humanitarian aid or medical urgency will still be granted approval for passage. Yesterday, Israeli officials hailed the breakthrough technology that detected and destroyed the most extensive terror tunnel from Gaza in recent months. Details about this technology has remained firmly under wraps, but just a few hours ago, Israeli security has pulled back the curtain just a bit and revealed a glimpse of the laboratory working to make sure no terror tunnels ever breach Israeli borders. Obviously, much of this technology, along with the identities of those who operate it, is strictly classified to protect security secrets. But what we do now know is that this specialized laboratory uses a sophisticated detection system. It was established 2 years ago following Hamas's explosive use of the tunnels in the 2014 Operation Protective Edge, and is stationed close to the Gaza border. The project, estimated to cost some $3.5 billion, utilizes both above and below ground sensors, and much like the Iron Dome, it's constantly being upgraded through live use in the field. The system's effectiveness has boosted Israeli beliefs that Hamas is likely winding down its tunnel activity. Still, yesterday's massive demolition of the longest and deepest Hamas tunnel yet signals that the fight is still ongoing. Security officials are split on whether or not these tunnels are being used amidst the ongoing weekend protests at the Gaza border. In the wake of recent admissions by Uganda and in the absence of a final deportation plan, right-wing lawmakers in the coalition are now pushing to ratify an exemption or cessation clause. If passed, a majority of 61 Knesset members would then be able to overturn the High Court's decisions, for example, in matters such as the illegal deportation of African asylum seekers. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is editor-in-chief at midad.org.il, Ziv Maor, and attorney Avi Rimon, who specializes in administrative law. Thank you both very much for coming in today. Now, for my first question, I'm going to turn to you, Ziv. It sounds like the courts are interpreting what is and isn't legal based on both Israeli and international law that Israel has signed on to, including, UN agreements about defining refugees and how to deal with them. That goes back all the way to the 1950s. So, isn't this type of law weakening Israel, ultimately?
First of all, I do agree that this type of law weakening Israel, but for very different reasons. As for the question, there is no doubt that the verdict delaying the deportation is illegal, is not aligned with Israeli nor with international law, and this is basically leftist politics made by the court illegally. That's what it is. As for the cessation clause, I am also against it, but from a different reason. The court has stolen the right to legislate from the Israeli public, and it should give it back without any terms and without any conditions. I'm against the cessation clause because it says, okay, this right was stolen from the citizen, now let's negotiate the terms under which the court will gain some kind of legislation right now. Once we will have judges that will be appointed with any connection to the Israeli public, once we have a valid constitution, then I will be willing to negotiate right for judges to legislate or to overthrow laws.
But so I'm going to turn it over. You know, what then is the point of having a courts if the Knesset will just overturn their decisions?
Well, I think in the constitutional structure of Israel, the power of the court to overrule laws by the Knesset is very essential. We must understand that the coalition in Israel is very powerful. The government is a proxy of the coalition in the Knesset. So the parliament in Israel is exceptionally powerful. There are no two houses of parliament as in many other countries. And in such a diverse society in Israel, with so many challenges, there is a great importance that there will be a body, a neutral body, which is not political, that can protect the basic human rights. Because these rights can be in jeopardy once in light of the power of the parliament.
So let's take that a step further. You know, we'll take the slippery slope argument and we'll say this law, the possibility of it being abused. Let's say the coalition switches to a left-wing government, and 10 years down the law, this law passes, and they say, okay, now we're going to use a 61 Knesset majority to push a string of left-wing laws. We're going to unilaterally withdraw from the West Bank, demolish any settlements, things like that. I mean, again, wouldn't you want the courts then?
You're not talking about the future, you're talking about the past. Just 13 years ago, this is more or less what happened. Now,
but wouldn't you want the courts then to be involved?
When the court, and when Avi here says that the court is, so to speak, neutral, this was a time was supposed to say, this is what I am, I protect human rights. When people of the Gaza Strip were stripped of their human rights and the court stood aside and did nothing with it, he lost the right to say, I'm neutral. The court in Israel is not elected and represents always the left. When rightists appeal to the court, they get no remedy whatsoever. When leftists they do whatever they want. This is the issue. The issue is, now when you say that the parliament in Israel and the government in Israel are powerful, you ignore one very important fact, that the court in Israel is the only branch of government that has got no restraints whatsoever. The checks and balances concept does not exist when it comes to the Israeli court.
How do you respond?
Well, the courts can rule upon a case that is brought to them. This is quite a limited power. They cannot initiate any law. They cannot initiate almost anything. They can rule whether this act is legal or not. So this is a very narrow power, which they can exercise almost up to its full extent. But courts are part of the system. You know,
right, well,
they have a great value and weight in the overall constitutional structure.
There is no constitutional structure without a constitution whatsoever.
All right, well, anyway, I have to cut it off there. I'm sorry, but thank you both very much for coming in today. All right, now fresh riots of ultra-Orthodox Jews have just erupted in the streets of Jerusalem. Though we've seen protests like this in the past, this new rally has taken an unusually violent turn. 4 police officers have been injured after being forced to use extreme measures like stun grenades and water cannons to break up the crowds. Typically, the ultra-Orthodox conduct these rallies to demonstrate against the arrest of Haredim who refused the draft into the I.D.F. In this case, however, an arrest has not actually even been confirmed. The violence erupted based only on the rumors of such an arrest. Haredi media reports that an ultra-Orthodox woman from the Har Chof community was allegedly arrested for draft dodging. Photos of the young woman believed to have been arrested have emerged on Facebook, however, and they don't really depict a woman who seemingly follows ultra-Orthodox lifestyle. Unfortunately, regardless of where she came from, it wouldn't be unheard of for a riot like this to have broken out over a rumor that turned out to be wrong. Disturbing developments are coming in now on the suspected murder of a 1-month-old infant baby. You may recall that the suspect in this case is the child's mother, an ultra-Orthodox woman from Beit Shemesh. This incident was first reported after the child drowned in a jacuzzi while the family was on a vacation together. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here now with more details. Brett, I understand the autopsy results are now back from the lab?
Correct. Those lab results have revealed even more horrific details in this case, actually. Evidence obtained in the autopsy also appears to line up with a confession from the child's mother, who is suspected of murder in this.
And what exactly is she saying?
Well, she is now apparently admitted to killing the child, basically. The autopsy indicates that she actually put him under the water 4 times before the infant tragically and inevitably drowned. But one of the more disturbing things said in her confession, as if this could even get worse, is that she said she saw a divine vision just before this all happened, and that it told her that God would intervene to save the child from the water.
Oh, it's absolutely horrible. So, I mean, I understand this woman has been diagnosed, though, by the court doctors as mentally unfit for prosecution. So that would mean that she won't stand trial even after admitting to this murder, right?
Right, that's how it seems now. And obviously we've seen cases in the past where suspects, who sometimes do come from the ultra-Orthodox community, claim mental disability in order to escape jail. But in this case, doctors on both sides of the case seem to agree that she is indeed unfit to stand trial. But the other key factor here in this murder is the husband, and he was apparently sleeping when the crime actually took place. But investigators have widely suspected him of both being involved in the murder and possibly attempting to destroy evidence after it happened. But investigators were not able to turn up enough evidence to put him behind bars or keep him in prison. He's actually walking free right now, which means that at the end of this, probably no one is ever going to stand trial for this murder.
This is such a difficult story. I mean, on the one hand, you have the courts that have declared the mother unfit, and so she's now in an institution, and be what it may, there isn't evidence to indict the husband. So, I mean, that you could say that's the justice system, I guess. But on the other hand, I know at the child's funeral, a lot of the Haredim who attended refused even to admit that this woman was capable of murder. I mean, if we can't talk about these issues at the heart of our societies and our communities, what hope do we have to change them, really?
No, I totally agree. And I mean, speaking of due process, obviously the government right now is talking about taking away some of that due process, taking away the court's ability to carry out that process at all. I mean, that's generally why democracies have a system of checks and balances in the first place. I mean, you just talked about this in your last interview. So the laws can be enforced or undone in a fair, legal way. And I'm not saying that our systems, our justice systems or our rehabilitation systems don't need deep and long reform, but simply undoing them, I think, threatens everything that makes a democracy kind of work. And this is a good case study for that.
All right, it's an interesting point. Brett, thank you for the update on this difficult topic. Thank you. All right, now, as we unfortunately know all too well, one of Israel's most cherished and important natural resources is currently in danger. The Dead Sea is shrinking by about 3 feet per year, a dangerous imbalance that threatens both communities near the shores and water industries for both Israel and Jordan. Well, the Israeli government is now earmarking a whopping new set of funds in an effort to save the Dead Sea once and for all. The new plan would invest nearly $120 million towards all kinds of ecological restoration of the Dead Sea and surrounding areas. The government recognizes that the shrinking of Dead Sea waters is a crisis that won't go away with short or even medium-term solutions. So this money is intended to begin the long-term solution the situation demands. This includes money for preserving the nearby En Gedi Nature Reserve, funds for geological survey, and money to help farmers bring in water from an outside source, all in an attempt to make sure that water taken from the Dead Sea doesn't outweigh the water that goes back in. Israel and Jordan regularly pump water out of the sea's hypersalty reserves for both mineral and water resources. But that pumping, on top of boosted evaporation numbers believed to result from global warming, has begun draining shorelines at an alarming rate. This has also caused deadly sinkholes to form in and around communities bordering the Dead Sea. But whether you're an ecologist, an Israeli, a Jordanian, or just a tourist, trust me, every penny spent preserving this precious and incredible world wonder known as the Dead Sea is worth it. One of the world's most innovative universities, Tel Aviv University, has just made another first. TAU is now opening its first ever venture capital fund, and this would give the institution nearly $20 million to reinvest in student startups, a decision only fitting in a country referred to as the Startup Nation. This fund is modeled after similar initiatives at MIT, Stanford, and the University of California in Berkeley. And if you ask me, I'm just shocked no one's thought of it over here already. Tel Aviv University is one of 3 Israeli institutes ranked among the world's most innovative higher learning centers. So by setting those students up with $20 million to back worthy startup ideas, well, it's not exactly rocket science. Israeli venture capital funds have already topped $1 billion. Bringing this model to universities won't just give us more startup ideas, but also the kind of crazy game-changing ideas that could only come from the confidence of young college students. Graduates from Tel Aviv University will also have a shot to pitch their startup ventures, and needless to say, more Israeli innovation is definitely on the way. And now we've all heard the saying that something's running as efficiently as a well-oiled machine. Well, practically nothing works that well out of nowhere, and large organizations with many moving parts need an especially focused way to manage all those many variables. Israeli company Advantech helps to do just that. And joining me now with more is Advantech Product Vice President Safrir Feynman. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so my first question is, just give me a little bit of rundown on what Advantech does.
So Advantech is a system integrator company in Israel. We specialize in implementing systems such as ERP systems, CRM systems, basically systems to manage your customers. We specialize in systems such as SAP. Basically any system with 3 letters in it.
Sure. So how does this translate into helping me run my organization?
So basically, if you have, if you have your company and you need to manage your personnel, your resources, and you also need to manage your customers, you need to manage your finance. So you need a very complex system to be able to manage all of these complex processes in one system.
See, and so this automates all of this functionality as well. I mean, this is this doesn't require like a lot of hands on deck to make sure that it's working.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you look at Advantech, at our system, we basically specialize in a few fields. So one of them would be the biggest field is the ERP, but we also have a division for infrastructure.
Okay.
And the division which I manage is the division which is called the products, which we take best of breed products such as IBM Maximo, which is a system for managing your assets. If you're a major company like a power plant and you want to manage all of your assets and the maintenance, so you use that. Another system very famous is called Click Software, which is basically used to manage personnel in the field.
And so you work, I mean, on everything from like a school to a small business to like a government agency to really just across the board.
Yes. Advantech has hundreds of customers around the globe in the finance industry. So we have banks. Sorry.
Basically, no, it's fine. I just want to say, this seems incredible. How do people get in touch with your company and take advantage of you?
Yeah, advantech.coil. You reach our company.
Perfect. All right, I'm so sorry to have to cut us up. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. All right, now come on, be honest. From time to time, you've gone to the zoo, seen all the adorable animals, and thought to yourself, just for a second, how much you'd love to take a fluffy little friend back home with you. Well, I wouldn't advise actually doing that, of course, especially since police just arrested someone here in Israel for committing that very crime. The suspect has just been arrested when he was found with baby ducklings literally in his pockets, along with an unspecified quantity of cannabis. And this all went down at the Jerusalem Tisch Family Zoological Garden, better known as the Biblical Zoo. And it turns out that the suspect is actually a worker there, which explains how he got his mitts so close to the ducklings in the first place. Now, if you've never been to the Biblical Zoo, then you should bump it to the top of your to-do list for sure. The incredible zoological garden is home to scores of exotic animals and specializes in Afro-Asiatic wildlife. And the lemur island is an especially wonderful treat. But truth be told, this actually isn't the zoo's first attempted kidnapping of animals either. A few years ago, someone successfully drugged and stole 2 rare marmoset monkeys from the zoo property. Thankfully, investigators tracked down the monkeys immediately and returned them to the zoo to be with their friends. Same goes for these baby ducklings. Police have handed them over to their mama duck, and all is right with the world now. Israeli Independence Day, or Yom HaAtzmaut, is now just 2 nights away, so if you haven't figured out how you're going to celebrate, listen up, because my next guest is here to tell us all about an amazing upcoming family event in Israel's Galilee region. So Yorai Reshef, Youth Organization Director from Hashomer Chadash, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so tell me a little bit about Hashomer Chadash and about the organization.
So the Hashomer HaChadash, it's a movement that started 10 years ago in the Galilee and the Negev. And the thing that we are doing is social and educational actives and things protecting farmers all over Israel in the Negev and the Galilee. But above all, we are operating 14 different educational programs, from a high school in the Arava and a pre-army program with 2,000 members along the year. And something like 3 days from today, on Tuesday, we're going to have a huge celebration of the independence.
Yeah. So, I mean, is Hashomer HaChadash, is it mostly like geared towards the periphery and youth?
Yeah, usually work around the periphery in the Negev and the Galilee, even though we have some activity inside the cities, for example, like Jerusalem, Hadera. Basically, we educate the next generation by working the land, by feeling the value of the land.
So what are you hosting at this Yom Ha'atzmaut event?
So first of all, the event is going to be at Yechiam Fortress, one of the most beautiful places in the West Galilee. And we're going to have, we believe, something like 3,000 people, families, kids, youth, who's going to come to Yechiam.
All sorts of different events for all ages.
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff.
Basically, it's for the families from age of 2 to the age of 80. And,
but above 80 and below 2, there's probably not for you.
It's up to them if they want to come, but it's going to be something big with singing Israeli songs together, dancing in circles, talking about the future of Israel. We're going to open the Independence Scroll and read it all together.
That's incredible. All right, well, if we're interested in checking it out, getting tickets, attending, whatever it is, go to Hashomer HaChadash.
There is no need for tickets.
No tickets, just go.
It's free entrance. We want everyone to come to celebrate together Yom Ha'atzmaut.
All right, well, check it out, Hashomer HaChadash. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.
All right, now it's been just over a month since the music streaming giant Spotify has originally launched in the Holy Land, and while this may not sound too shocking, Israelis have proven that no matter the millions of songs offered to them, they simply love their Israeli music more. AlTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has the details.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, according to statistics that were released earlier this week, Spotify says that the most popular artist among Israeli listeners was the local favorite Omer Adam. Now, while Israelis and Spotify users in general have the ability to listen to over 35 million songs from across the world, they still love their homeland's music.
All right, well, I mean, that's not too shocking, but it is still very interesting to look at. Now, you know, living here in Israel, you see a lot of international influences, whether we're talking about food, fashion, style, or music. I hear a lot of international artists being played in bars and clubs too, for example.
Right, exactly. I hear probably something like 50-50 when it comes to music at bars, half international, half Israeli music. But apparently, Drake was the second most popular artist here in the Holy Land, followed by Kendrick Lamar and Ed Sheeran. Now, when it comes to individual songs, Drake beat out the Israeli Omer Adam with his song God's Plan, which was the most listened to by Israelis in the past month. And then following that actually went to Israel's entry to the upcoming Eurovision competition, Toy by Netta Barzirai.
Speaking of the song Toy, I seriously have been hearing it absolutely everywhere. Even like friends from abroad are telling me they saw this crazy music video and are rooting for Israel to win this year.
Yes.
I mean, before that, you know, I'm wondering, did the stats say anything about how the Spotify app itself is doing here in Israel since its debut?
Yes, well, according to the Spotify app, Israelis love their music and spend a great deal of time using the app, apparently 2.3 million hours worth. In just the first couple of weeks of the app launching, the streaming company said that 39% of the users are based in Tel Aviv and are between the ages of 13 to 34.
All right, well, I'm sure these numbers are probably going to double within the next couple of months.
Probably.
All right, thank you for joining us, Manuel.
Thank you.
All right, and now for our Hebrew word of the day. One of the biggest problems plaguing our Dead Sea coastline is not the drying up of the seabeds, but the dangerous sinkholes that the dry beds leave behind. So today's word is bol'an, meaning sinkhole. Bol'an shares the root with the word livloa, meaning to swallow, which makes sense, of course, because the swallowing up of land is what results in a bol'an in the first place. Typically, a bol'an can be kind of a dangerous place to be, so I wouldn't advise digging around in a bol'an. But then again, some bolanim or sinkholes fill up with water after a few years and become little lakes, perfect for swimming, sunbathing, and contracting exotic bacterium-based infections. Curse you, or revenge, Montezuma. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear and warm with a low of 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is also expected to be clear and sunny with a rise in temperatures to a high of around 81 or 27 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.51 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Marin Porras, and thank you for watching.